Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last in our LLC virtual series featuring Master Varii. So, welcome to our set, and I'm excited to turn it over to one of my favorite people, Master Varii. Please take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Master Varii. The class they've asked me to teach today is one of my favorites, but a lot of it depends on your willingness to be introspective. So I'm going to challenge you to really look inside yourself with this class. The title of the class is What is Your Why? Now, what is your why is actually very relevant to any aspect of your life. Since we're doing this for Leather Leadership Conference, I'm going to focus a little bit on what is your why if you are wanting to move into a position of leadership within the community, whether it's as a teacher, whether you're serving on a board, maybe you're a volunteer. Whatever you're choosing to do within the community, it's important to ask yourself, what is my motivation for doing that? It can be many things, but usually the first answer that people give is it is true, but it is not complete, if that makes any sense. If I were to ask somebody, for example, why they decided to volunteer for an event, that could be anything from them saying they want to serve the community in some way. They just want to help out. Or it might be that it's their way of getting a discount on their ticket to come in because, things are tough and everybody is trying to save a little money here and there. But usually motivations for that go to a much more emotional level. When somebody teaches, for example, within the community, standing up and teaching, people often think that people who teach within the community, maybe they're being compensated in some way. I've got news for you. That's not usually the case. They may get comped into an event, but their travel is going to be out of their pocket. A lot of times their hotels may be. So there's got to be something in it for you. That doesn't mean it's selfish. It means that you're looking at a deeper level. If I were to ask, and I'm going to hope that this is rather interactive and that you will put your comments up so that we can see them. Otherwise, it may feel a little like I'm talking to thin air. I've asked Dominion to leave his face up so that I can at least talk to him. But
you and I will be chatting back and forth. But yes, please make sure that you post in the comments. You can post in the comments both in our live on Facebook and in our live on YouTube. And don't forget, after Master Varii's talk, we will have a trivia contest, and there's a prize for the trivia contest. So
there's some good stuff. Yeah. So, but when you look at what your motivations are, I probably should do a quick caveat here and tell you I'm a psychologist. So a lot of the things that I am telling you are coming from a place of understanding a little bit of depth of personality. What motivates you, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a work environment, whether it's in volunteer work, they're going to have common threads because that is your driving force. If that driving force, if someone says, I just want to serve my community, that's great. That is a good first answer. But then I would come back and say, why do you want to serve your community? Mm-hmm. What's in it for you? That sounds like it's selfish, but it isn't at all. Your answer when you go down another level, why is it that I want to serve my community? What is it that I get out of that? Why is that fulfilling to me? That's a really important piece of this puzzle. So Dominion, since you're my captive audience here, so I'm going to ask you a question. You serve in so many capacities. You serve in Men of Onyx. You serve Leather Leadership Conference. You serve the community in so many different ways. Why do you want to serve? What's in it for you?
So the base answer is that in 1996, I went to the Million Man March, and I made certain commitments at that point. I was young and foolish enough to believe that when I took an oath to do something in front of all of these people and before God, that I had to live up to that I would help my community. And that community has changed over time, but it's that community. And I have certain skills. And so I'm here to help people be the best version of themselves in whatever organization that I'm a part of. So that's what I do for Onyx, and that's what I do for Leather Leadership Conference.
Absolutely.
And I promise you, we did not discuss this answer before.
Oh, no, we didn't. And he wasn't prepared for me to put him on the spot. So I appreciate him being such a good sport about it. But when you gave me that second answer, that goes down one other tier. That goes back into your history. It's a point in time where you were moved to make a commitment and to live up to that commitment. Now let's go down one more tier. What does that give you personally? How does it make you feel?
It gives me the satisfaction that I try to put myself into other people's shoes. And there have been times where I didn't have the mentorship or the support that I didn't have. So I try to make sure that others have that. And doing that gives me a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment.
That's great. Now, one of the things I'm going to tell everybody here is when you start digging, you're going to go down several tiers.
Some people have also said some things, if you don't mind.
Good. Please.
Because I remember you don't see all of the comments. So Leather Lioness says, a co-creation, being part of something bigger than myself and contributing. And Shabari Rose says, it fills my service hearts, and there's more friends. So, two other good reasons why you might do these sort of things.
Now, what I'm going to tell you is there's a hint here. This class, when I teach it in person, usually by the end of the class, people are crying. And the reason is that the first couple of answers that you come up with, while accurate, for example, Leather Lion has said that co-creation, being part of something bigger than themselves, it makes you feel to some extent like you belong. You fit, and it's fulfilling in that capacity. When you dig down a little bit more, it's going to hit an emotion. It's going to hit a target. In my practice, I used to say that change occurs when things travel from your head to your heart, because that's where you're motivated, and it becomes your driving force at that point. I'll share a little bit about my why. Why do I teach? Why do I serve the community? Why am I on a board? Why do I take care of the things I do? Why was I in private practice for 40 years? Part of it was a drive to make a difference. And that was about my level 3. When I realized that in any area of my life, I felt a need, a driving force to make a difference in this world, then I ask one more why. why do I feel the need to make a difference? And it was because for me, that meant that I had value and worth. If I can make a difference, because as an entity, as a soul individual moving through the course of the world, if you want to make a difference and an impact, and you feel this sense that you're leaving a space better than you found it, then to me, it gave me that sense of personal value. And for you, Dominion, when you said serving and being there for others when filling a void that maybe you had not had, and you wanted to do that, you're improving their life. You're paying it forward. And paying it forward has so much value in this community. It is the opposite of selfish. It may be somewhat self-serving in that it also adds to our value and our sense of who we are. And when we look in the mirror, we respect that. It's like I feel this sense of I'm living my life with honor and integrity, and I'm giving back. I'm giving more than I take. That is a basic philosophy of life. When you hit that, you recognize that that's who you are, and you're doing it for reasons that are important. But now, what about a person who doesn't share those particular values? Because we've all run into people who serve in positions of leadership for personal gain.
I want to. So, Leather Lioness gave a deeper answer and said that to know that my life is meaningful and others care and want the changes we mutually feel are necessary to make the world a better place for all.
Absolutely.
Yes. And yeah, I've certainly more than once I've served with people who I felt didn't have, common values with me. But sometimes I feel like in those situations, I stay true to the reasons that I'm there and don't let them be a distraction to me, unless they do or say something that is so crazy that it really goes against the mission. Because even if you're here for self-centered reasons, I am not a religious person at all, but I do know that there's this thing that, sometimes something can be done with bad intent, but a good outcome. So even if you're doing something for self-centered reasons, if it still ultimately serves a greater good, then that's just something that you've got to deal with separately. If you still feed 1 million kids, if you did it for selfish reasons, those kids still got fed.
Right. When people are moving into positions of leadership and they are in that spotlight, it can also change them. They may volunteer for good reasons, but then they start feeding on the spotlight, and that mission will change, and that can sometimes take them off target for the mission of whatever the event is that they're serving. But let's look at leadership within the community, for example. A lot of times people volunteer just because somebody needed help. So they jump in and they volunteer to do that. They'll give of themselves, but if there's not something that they're getting back from it, they will also burn out. Sometimes people will also want the spotlight, and that's their sole reason for doing it. And if that's their sole reason for doing it, they may be able to contribute a little bit. But ultimately, they're going to turn things around to be about them. not about the organization they're serving or the people that they're serving. If you have ever found someone who was doing it because they wanted the spotlight, whatever the doing it might be, what was usually, I'm going to ask and see if somebody comments on this, what was your experience about how it impacted other people? Anybody have a good comment about that?
As other people join, I will say that often time, so I know a lot of people who want to run for titles. And, the very first question I ask them is, why do they want to run for this title? And then the second question is, why do they need, then it's always something like, world peace, or to feed the babies, or to help the gays in, Russia or wherever. And then my second question is always, well, why do you need this title in order to do that? And so I usually try to dig deeper into that, because what I found is that if they've never thought beyond seeing their name in the spotlight, then whatever position that they have, whether it be a title holder, a producer for an event, that event is going to suffer because they're only going to think of it in the most shallow and vacuous terms.
You're absolutely 100% right. Now I see somebody is commenting there.
Chris Harris says, I've received so much from the community, a deeper understanding of myself, my power dynamic, friends, and connections. I feel an obligation to repay and pay it forward to others. And Hannah the scribe says, when someone is focused on the spotlight, I often see a lack of efficiency as a trade-off for more of a focus on them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Ultimately, if someone's motivation for being there is all about what they're going to gain, it will ultimately cost the organization that they serve. Because they'll have a very shallow focus, and it becomes about them and their needs. There was something that it's interesting how often these days I think back about the wisdom of some of the elders in my life, like my grandmother or my father. And my grandmother told me something when I was about 8 years old. And she said, sweetheart, you've got a giving heart. She said, but give to the givers. The takers make them prove themselves. And every single time I have ventured away from that philosophy, it has not just cost me, but it's cost the organization or the business or the nonprofit that we've been involved with. Because you can't outgive a giver. A giver, when you give to a giver, they feel an obligation, like some of the comments that we've gotten, to begin to pay it forward, to pass it on. You become a conduit, you receive it, but then you push it out onto others. So I may touch 10, but those 10 who touch 10, now I've touched 100 people, because those givers will push it out.
Right.
People who take, and that's the people whose its focus is about them, they're like a sponge. They absorb it. They hold on to it. They hoard the spotlight. It doesn't go much beyond them. That doesn't mean they can't serve a function, as you pointed out, because sometimes they have skills and talents. But people who are in leadership need to know that about the people who volunteer. So if we're in leadership, then we vet the people who volunteer, who also step up to the plate and want to give. You have to know their motivation as well. It's also true in relationships, isn't it?
Very much so.
If you're in a relationship and you don't know the motivation of the other person. What is it that they're getting out of this?
Mm-hmm.
What am I getting out of this? A relationship needs to be a little like a tennis match. It goes back and forth. Doesn't mean people don't sometimes miss a ball and you have to serve 2 or 3 times. But if you're the only one hitting the ball, you're the only one on the court. And sometimes you have to wake up and realize you're the one that's invested.
Right.
In things like my practice, when people would come in and we would be working on an issue, it was important for me to know what their motivation was, because that's never easy. Any of you that have ever been in therapy, you know that digging deep into things and understanding yourself, the self-actualization, realization of your motivations, is not an easy thing, because sometimes you have to deal with pain or issues that are unresolved. But you don't want the pain to be your motivation. You want the result. You want to grow from that, so that the pain is not what's in control, but you sometimes do grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to learn early on that sometimes people aren't invested. They show up because they want somebody to listen to them, but they don't really want to change. And it was hard for me because I'm a healer by
Mm-hmm.
trade. It was hard for me to realize that they have to have skin in the game. You can't make it better for somebody else if they don't have skin in the game. Let's take that back to a leadership perspective of your why. Let's say you've got the best motivation in the world. You're serving on a board and you're working to really improve the functionality of that board. You want to help reach as many people as possible. You're teaching classes, you're doing all the things. If you can't engage the people on the other side to invest themselves in it, then the growth from that is going to be limited to the feel goods of that particular class, but they're going to walk out and nothing changes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
If, however, you drop from head to heart, if you can see the impact on other people and it becomes about them and not about you, if you start digging into their why are they there? What do they want from this particular class? How can I give to them in such a way that it makes them think, that makes them look at themselves differently, that gives them a gift of challenging them in some form or fashion, whether it's thinking about new pieces of information, whether it's seeing it from a different perspective. It's amazing the difference that you can make, because they take it beyond the class.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll go have conversations with other people. For those of you that volunteer and want to serve in the community, when you look at it from a perspective of what's the long-term impact that you can make, what is that why? Do you want to build that legacy that is not about tooting your own horn, but about what you can give in such a way that they then give to somebody else, who then gives to someone else?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Dominion, about the mentorship. Mentorship is probably one of the things that I think is so incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
it is, whether it's teaching a skill, whether it's helping someone develop their own leadership capacity. When you help someone grow personally, that almost always leads to them passing that forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit back and look at that and go, wow, that's amazing. And it's then you feel proud of what they do, their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other experiences that you guys have had?
Hannah says one of the most important things leaders can do is empower future leaders.
Absolutely. Hannah, you hit the nail right on the head. If we are not empowering the people that we're teaching to then go do something else, if we're not empowering other leaders, why are we there? That says a lot about your why. Because if your focus is to empower others, ultimately you are empowering yourself too. Because as you empower others, that mission kind of grows and we become better at what we do and we grow. I don't know that I've ever taught a class that I haven't also learned something.
Always.
It's amazing the way that happens, but empowering someone else always touches my heart when I see that hit and I see someone go, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel that sense of value, that I had value in that moment to that person. And I don't know about you guys, but that makes me feel like I have a right to take up space in this world,
Yes.
as opposed to being a vacuum. When I can give that to somebody else, then I feel that my value is greater by empowering someone else. I'll tell you a story that just happened this weekend, and a discussion, because this class, the fact that we were doing this class came up. And if any of you who were in this past weekend are on this call, I would encourage you to speak up about it. But this weekend was the Love on the Quilt weekend. And we had, every year we do this because the leather quilt is a piece of leather history. And as various pieces of that history, the squares form the larger fabric of our community. And it travels all over the country and it even goes to Canada. So each year the quilt goes from place to place. There's a lot of wear and tear on the quilt. This amazing community of bootblacks who have such a love for leather. And I'm not just talking about the fabric, although they love the scent and the smell and the feel of it, but they like the history of it. They want to know the history of the boots that they tend. And they want to feel that they have made an impact on the people that they serve. But this amazing community shows up once a year and they come to the farm and they take care of every single square. Every square is cleaned front, back. They look at each piece and repair it. Everything from the grommets to making sure nothing has faded. They condition it and they get it ready for another year of travel. I was standing there watching them as they love on the quilt. They're pouring who they are into each piece, and tears would be streaming down their face as they remembered someone who was no longer here that had passed.
Mm-hmm.
Or they would see an organization where it was their first experience within the community, and how that particular piece of our history had impacted their life in such a powerful way that it had altered who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And as they would hold those pieces in their hand and remember the individuals and how those people had made a difference in their life, tears would flow and they would begin to tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it would impact them to spread that love to other people once they left and they were able to share those experiences. I watched that happen with the Men of Onyx patch. The Men of Onyx and also with the Onyx Pearl, the Queen Rainey's patch. People just were sobbing because they started recounting memories of time shared and the things that had done. And as they were telling these stories, other people were learning from those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it became part of their why to empower other people and to begin to pay it forward that way. I think that part of our ethics is to be true to ourselves and understand the reason that we are in a space. Why are we volunteering?
Mm-hmm.
It does have a dual meaning. Why are we volunteering is, what is it that we want to give to somebody else? But it is very much also, what do we want to gain from this experience? It's always two-sided, always. And when people try to make it too altruistic and they're not balanced in that way, they're going to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you give, and there is nothing that's filling up your tank, you ultimately run out of gas.
Very much so.
And I think most leaders particularly have a hard time with that balance, because we will give until we don't have anything else to give.
Mm-hmm.
And we can become very broken in that way because we are out of gas, and it can really damage your health. It can damage your mental health. And you can reach a point where you just can't give. You can't give from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
Where you choose to give of yourself, you have the most impact when you're giving from a full tank.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched this weekend, the boot blacks that were here, they were giving of themselves, but they were absorbing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They were filling back up. They were filling their tank. At LLC, one of the reasons that I'm so invested in teaching and being part of LLC was because when I first attended LLC, the very first class that I ever attended at LLC was taught by Sir Guy.
Mm-hmm.
And as Sir Guy was pouring out his heart and sharing where he had been and who he was also challenging us to think of things in a different way. That made a difference. It caused me to stop and think about myself, stop and ask myself those questions of, why am I here? and wanting then to empower others and give it back. As Hannah said, what are we doing here if we're not empowering somebody else?
Amen.
So what are some ways that you feel empowered, and what are some ways that you feel you empower others?
I feel empowered. Funny enough, I feel empowered when I'm standing on stage. So, but it's not the way you think. It's not sort of an egotistical thing. When I'm standing on stage, representing an organization, I feel empowered. I feel like I'm most fully in charge of all of my faculties and all of my cylinders are firing, when I'm on stage speaking about whatever organization. That's a feeling of empowerment, knowing that those people are there lifting me up and rooting for me. And I feel like I empower others when I teach as well. And I try to think of every event as a learning opportunity. So I'm always in a continuous improvement mode, so I'm always doing things in such a way that other people can see it and learn from it and take it and do their own thing. So that's why it's important to me to always do my best, because other people are there like, oh, okay, well, how do I put on an event, like Leather Leadership Conference in LA in March? Okay, well, we want to do our best at it, because other people will come, and if we do a crappy job, then they'll be discouraged from putting on a small event in their town or a big event in their town. But if we do a really good job and the best that we can, then they'll be empowered, because they'll say, oh, okay, Dominion did it, Master Varii did it, Master Plain Jane did it, Mixter Mita did it, Master Steel Toe did it. We were able to put it on, and they'll say, I can do it because they did it.
That's right. Sometimes it's about empowering people by giving them an example to follow, about saying, I'm just an ordinary human being.
Right.
I'm flawed. I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to say things or do things. And oops, I mispronounced somebody's name. Okay. I say, I'm sorry. I move on. I get it right. But I've watched you on stage, Dominion, and you play off of the energy of the people, and you make someone laugh and smile that may have been having a less than positive day. When you challenge somebody to think a little deeper, then you've made a huge difference. And you do that. Sometimes you do it with humor. I've watched you take and tackle a very serious topic and do it with humor. And because you did it that way, it may have even been confrontational, but by doing it with humor, it didn't feel that way. One of the best compliments I ever received in my practice is someone told me that I had the skill of kicking somebody in the ass and then feeling like I'd given them a hug.
Yes.
And I took that as a great compliment, because it meant that I could offer corrections in love. And your tagline is do all things with love.
Yes.
If we can't empower and challenge, if we can't help somebody think of things differently, if we can't, sometimes even somebody disagreeing with you, that's perfectly okay. We're not the same people. But if somebody's going to disagree with me, that's great if what they do is dig in enough to say, why am I disagreeing? Why do I believe what I believe? then they have created some additional stability and growth in their own right. I've still done my job. I've still done what I need to do, because if they disagree but they respect the class or the person enough to say, okay, I can disagree, or maybe this is true for them, but doesn't feel quite right for me. Then they ask, well, what is right for me? How do I do this differently in a way that fits for me? And they can then offer that.
I see, before you go on, I see a couple. So Hannah says, I think the most empowering thing is to receive knowledge in a way that instills confidence. Jeremy Nelson says, when I help someone have a light bulb moment, or I help them learn a new aspect of themselves. And Chris Harris says, I feel empowered when someone I've taught shares their success employing those skills, or when someone I've taught refers another person to me.
Absolutely. And see, every one of those things that you guys mentioned also adds to your feeling of value, doesn't it? It adds to your sense of self-worth. It is feeding both sides of the equation. It's balanced, because as you are empowering others, they're feeling empowered. I love reading things that, this is going to sound strange, but sometimes looking at different perspectives allows me to sometimes feel better about my own perspective.
Sure.
But if I never read things that are from a different perspective, a different challenge, then I'm living in an echo chamber. And echo chambers typically become very dysfunctional. The reason diversity in every aspect of our life, diversity of thought, diversity of culture, diversity of age, diversity of race, of gender, of sexuality, all of the things. If all you surround yourself with is people who think like you do, then you're never going to grow.
Right.
Growth is usually uncomfortable. It's when you look at something and it feels that challenges you. That's when you grow. So I like reading things and hearing people that make me a little uncomfortable, because then I ask, why am I uncomfortable?
Right.
What is it about this? And I find that it gives me more resilience and looking at things from a more global perspective. When I find outside of myself, I can see it from somebody else's point of view. I think sometimes people fear discomfort. And I think it's real growth when you don't. When you embrace that kind of discomfort and see it as a challenge. There was an old country bumpkin kind of minister one time, who, I didn't know him, but he was the father of a good friend of mine. And he came to something that I was teaching, and he came up to me and he said, you're enjoying this success. This was professionally, this was in a vanilla. And he said, you're enjoying this success and it's wonderful. He said, enjoy that time, because when you are at the peak of your success, that mountaintop experience, as he called it, he said, is great. enjoy it, let it rejuvenate you, but don't get too comfortable there because you don't grow there. He said the places where you grow is down in the valley. And down in the valley, that's where all the shit is.
Yes.
It's where the richest soil is. It is where sometimes things are a little uncomfortable. I had a mentee of mine who said they didn't trust anybody who didn't embrace the discomfort of growth. That when it was all about them being comfortable or seeking pleasure in the moment without the other side of embracing the discomfort of growth, that was usually where we got ourselves sideways. That's usually where somebody gets into unhealthy activity and self-absorption or predatory behavior or whatever that thing is, but it's where you get very out of balance. So when you look at your why, it's also very personal about how can I grow? Why am I here? I'm here to empower others and help them grow. But I'm also here to find that point of growth myself.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter where you are in leadership. It's about continuing to push, to continue that point of growth. And the people that I know that are in leadership that I look to and I respect the most are the ones that almost seek out that discomfort of growth. We may every once in a while want to take a minute and rest and enjoy the fruits of our labor, but we don't spend a whole lot of time there. We rest a minute and then we get back in the trenches because we're looking to stretch a little bit further. And your comfort zone is called a comfort zone for a reason.
Right.
It's not your growth zone. So don't get lost in your comfort zone. Push yourself to grow too. So part of your why is, why do I want to grow? Where is it that I need that piece of growth? And then challenging yourself to do that. Because if you don't, you'll ultimately lose your why, whatever that why was. You can't teach what you do not know, and you cannot lead where you will not go.
That's actually quite profound. Actually, there are a lot of people who want to be in charge, but they're not willing to go there.
Exactly. Or how many people do we know who jump into leadership positions, but then they're not willing to continue their own growth process enough to be that leader?
We could have a whole hour discussion just on that topic. I'm like, you knew what you signed up for when you ran for this position, right? So then why are you surprised that people are asking you to do the things that you signed up for?
I've had that happen, actually. When you serve in a particular capacity and then people actually expect you to fulfill that,
Right.
you looked at the benefits of that capacity, maybe on being on this board or doing this particular thing, but you didn't consider the fact that sometimes leaders have to clean the toilet. Sometimes when you're putting on an event, it's the behind the scenes stuff. It's not the in front of the crowd stuff, the things that when people come to an event, they don't see a lot of what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
And behind the scenes is not glamorous. It's work. When people look at relationships and they look at the why, sometimes they get caught up in that NRE, new relationship energy, which is wonderful and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage you to feed on it and love on it and let it fuel you, but don't fool yourself into thinking that that's where the relationship lives. New relationship energy, eventually you have to get down to the work of building that long-term relationship. And it's not always pretty.
Right.
It's the trenches. It's laying the foundation of doing the work of building the trust within the relationship that makes it extend beyond that new relationship energy. Looking at yourself and say, why am I here? Am I here for the high? Or am I here for the long term? That's part of your why, whether it's leadership, relationship. What is it that you expect out of your profession? All of those things are truly about growth and looking at how you see yourself. I'd like to end with this because this has an impact, I think a direct impact on our community.
Mm-hmm.
Is sometimes we may be the only person leading the way, whether it's me being a dominant woman in that space, me being an indigenous person in that space, somebody being a person of color in that space. If we aren't willing to accept that leadership position of paving the way for other people to follow, and we can't allow ourselves to feel comfortable in a space that maybe doesn't fit completely. I remember somebody saying to me, how did you walk into this space and feel comfortable being the only female dominant in this space? Didn't it feel threatening to you? No. It sometimes felt less than perfect. It didn't always feel comfortable. But if I knew who I was and I could walk into a space with confidence in who I was, then somebody, if it made somebody else uncomfortable, that was probably a good thing.
Yes.
Because I was confident in me, and it was somebody who wasn't comfortable with a female dominant in that space. And I've run into people who didn't believe female dominance existed. But if I didn't get defensive about that and I just let them feel that energy, then maybe that discomfort allowed them to grow. Mm-hmm. If I walk in with something to prove, on the other hand, instead of just accepting who I am and saying, this is me, and you can like me, you can not like me, but just like me or dislike me because of who I am and get a sense of who I am, then it opens the door for other people like me to walk in those spaces after me.
Right.
And to have that respect. That does take a certain level of strength, but it's not accomplished with hate. It's accomplished with love.
Mm-hmm.
And patience and being able to be comfortable in your own skin. And that kind of growth and empowering has to do with your personal work first. When you walk into a space as a gay man of color, you've walked into plenty of spaces where that was not the norm.
Definitely.
But when you're comfortable in who you are, it invites people to get to know you.
Right.
And you've opened other doors. And it allows you to almost educate just by being you.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we look at our why and look at the impact we want to have on this world, we can then navigate those uncomfortable moments.
Yes.
Have any of you experienced that peace of being who you are and comfortable in your own skin that you felt open the door for somebody else to follow?
I'll wait for others to do that as I get ready for our next activity, fun activity after this. Because immediately following Master Varii's talk, we will have a trivia contest, and the winner will receive a free pass. Excuse me. You'll receive a free pass to LLC 2025 for a free registration is what I meant to say. Excuse me. So for me, the moment that I felt that sort of confidence in myself, I often feel it at work, because I think of myself, well, I work in this IT profession, but what we actually do is build train stations. And so while the people that I work with are great at IT, they don't know much about design and construction. So for me, I imagine it's the same for you. It's like female dominance don't exist, but yet here I am. I literally am. Therefore, but if you know who you are and you know what your strengths are, then everything else that people say are noise. So are there things I don't know about IT? But that wasn't why I was brought into this space. I was brought in because I have a background in design and construction that can help you build this facility. So I have that piece that comes from knowing who I am and what my skills are, and I speak only about those things. So
I'm going to close then with this and kick it over to you for the next piece. And
before you do, we've got a couple of people that chimed in. So Hannah said, I've had several people tell me that one of the most empowering things I did for them was just publicly exist, as in my roles and demographics. And then Carrie says, having DID, which I apologize, I do not know what DID stands for. I've managed to get a lot of messages focusing on my openness with something so vulnerable. I'm somehow inspiring people to explore their own vulnerability just by showing my own. I'm sorry, go ahead, Master Varii.
And it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of personal growth in yourself to feel that centered and to be willing to be that vulnerable. What I was going to end with is that for those of you who move into positions of leadership, especially in our community, and whether it's the leather community, the BDSM community, the kink community in general, for your local groups or for national groups, when you do that, recognize being able to fill those positions well requires you to challenge yourself to that continual growth and to develop that confidence to be vulnerable, to be who you are authentically.
Mm-hmm. I
remember Queen Rainey challenging me many years ago with this. And then I remember Goddess MW in Atlanta, hearing her say, be authentically who you are, whether it's in combat boots or 6-inch stilettos.
Right.
And that kind of confidence does, in fact, empower other people behind you. And it challenges their view of the world. When you share your culture, your identity, who you are, your perspective, your knowledge, you're challenging other people to grow, and you're making an impact beyond yourself. If your why is only about the spotlight, only about what it's going to give to you, I would challenge you to dig a little deeper, because ultimately your impact won't be very great if it's all about you. And that's where we sometimes get into self-serving modes, and that's not a healthy leadership place.
Yes.
We'll end with that and kick it to you, Dominion, for our fun trivia.
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Master Varii. So everyone give Master Varii a virtual round of applause. So thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was much needed, and it's a great bookend to our virtual series, because we started with Master Plain Jane in September, who spoke about rising from the ashes, how to recover from burnout. Then we had a panel on leadership, and now we're talking about what's your why. So this was a good bookend to our virtual series leading up to Leather Leadership Conference, which will be in, as I said before, Los Angeles, the weekend of the 14th through the 16th of March. So we hope to see you all there. And as we move forward, we're going to have ourselves a nice trivia question. But before I do, I want to make sure that everybody has everything that they need to get information on our conference. So in our chats, I'll be posting the information for the event. So you can go to leatherleadership.org or to our link tree, which is linktree/leatherleadercon. So we're going to have a series of 10 questions, and the winner of this trivia contest, again, will receive a free registration for Leather Leadership Conference in exchange for booking 2 nights in a hotel room. Because if you have ever put on an event, you know that you think you are in the business of putting on the event, but what you are really in the business of is selling hotel rooms. And so with that, we'll be asking a series of questions, and the first person to win will get a point for that. So let me get my 10 questions ready and get my thing together so I can do this side by side. So question number 1. Is everyone ready? And Master Varii, you and I cannot win.
I will stay quiet.
When was the first Leather Leadership Conference held? Just post your comment in the chat. The question is, when was the first Leather Leadership Conference held? I see some longtime attendees who commented in the group, so I expect to see a few comments. So we'll give it 10 seconds. Hold on. I gotta remember my thing. So timer. Nope. Stopwatch. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. The first Leather Leadership Conference was held in 1997. All right. So who knows where the first Leather Leadership Conference was held? You have 30 seconds to respond, starting now. The first, Honey Bear. You know what? Because I like you, Honey Bear, I'm going to give you that point. The second question is, where was the first Leather Leadership Conference held?
House of Ra says in Philly.
No, I'm afraid that is not where the first Leather Leadership Conference was held.
Blank space says New York City.
That's exactly right. All right. That is exactly
Leather
right.
Lioness got it at the exact same time. Both of them came in, and Honey Bear too.
All right. So let's see. We've got one for Honey Bear, one for Blank Space, and one for Leather Lioness. All right. So I expect to see a lot of responses here. So name the current home, as in where Leather Leadership Conference will be held in 2025.
I hope you guys know this one.
Name the current home of the Leather Leadership Conference. No, I'm afraid not, Leather Lioness.
That's where it was last year.
That's where it was last year. Very good, Blank Space. All right. Next question.
Blank Space got it right. It's in LA.
Yep, I got it. All right. Next question. Other than New York and LA, because we've just mentioned those, name one of the cities where Leather Leadership Conference has been held in the past, starting now. Some of you had the right answer before, so you should be able to comment on this. Name one of the cities. Very good, Leather Lioness. San Francisco. We'll take California, House of Ra. We'll take Atlanta, Blank Space. 4 seconds. Atlanta. All right, so I'll give it to Veronica. I got to spell Veronica.
Cat and Honey got it right. Jeremy says Minneapolis.
And Cat Black got it right. And who else? And Honey Bear. Unless I don't believe we've been in Minneapolis, Jeremy, but if you can prove me wrong, because some of our records are a little spotty going back almost 2.5 decades. So if you can prove me wrong, I'll get you that point. All right. So this is going to require a little bit of knowledge and for you to have already been paying attention to what's been going on. So name one of the keynotes for Leather Leadership Conference 2025, and you have 30 seconds starting now.
Two amazing people.
You know, we're not discouraging you from going to. All right, so we'll come back to that one. So no one got that one, but I'm going to believe Jeremy when he says that LLC 2004 was in Minneapolis.
He may have just helped us with our history.
Yes. As I said, you know, the one of
Lexi got it.
All right, Lexi, I'm gonna let you slide and get you that point. So Lexi. Our two keynotes for LLC 25 are Lexi Bailey, are Sir Guy and Slave Girl J.
And you don't want to miss either one of them.
No, those are going to be amazing
individuals.
Conversations. All right, we are halfway there. So, next question. Name a current board member of the Leather Leadership Conference. A current board member of the Leather Leadership Conference starting now. Name a current board member of the Leather Leadership Conference. Very good, Master Lexi. Master Varii is on the board. Unfortunately, Sir Guy is not on the board right now, Veronica. We've got Master Varii. So, and I will give you Master Plain Jane.
Yeah, Master Plain Jane is correct.
Yes. So, for those of you
also Dominion, there we go. House of Valor, got it.
It says right there on the thing. So Master Plain Jane is the chair. I am the vice chair. Dina is our secretary. Master Steel Toe is our treasurer, and Master Varii and Aaron are our board members at large. So, one of our this is a throwback from a previous presentation.
Yeah, Veronica said
and Mita. They are going to murder me dead because I forgot.
And Mixer Mita is head of programming.
Head of programming. He's programming chair. Yes. So, let's see. Next question. Name the current chair of the Leather Leadership Conference.
And he
starting now. The current chair of the Leather Leadership Conference. Oh, the goddess indigo. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Am I putting your? Well, it's on your thing. The government name. Okay, we'll switch that out. The current chair of the Leather Leadership Conference.
Master Plain Jane.
Very good. Master Plain Jane is the current chair of the Leather Leadership Conference. All right. I want the next question is for you to name the current international boot black. International Ms. Boot Black, excuse me. Starting now.
And they will be in attendance.
They will. Oh, well, that's almost a gimme, goddess. That's your sash sister. And Lexi got it as well.
That's right. Good job.
Very good. Spank Cake is the current international Ms. Boot Black. And we've got two more questions. Next question is, name the virtual series presentation by Master Plain Jane from September of 2024. Starting now. If you're following me, you can find it on my Facebook page. If you're following Leather Leadership Conference, you can find it on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Master Plain Jane gave a beautiful presentation and talk on Rise from the Ashes, how to recover from burnout. Lexi, we will give you that point. All right, and Jeremy, because you gave us some knowledge, I'll give you that point as well. All right, and our last question: who is the current caretaker of the Leather Quilt? Starting now. The question is, who is the current caretaker of the Leather Quilt? I'm looking for the name of a person. Who is the current caretaker of the Leather Quilt? 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Very good, Leather Lioness. All right.
Excellent.
And I will give it to Blank Space because they gave a complete answer.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the current caretakers of the Leather Quilt are Master Varii and Slave Neil. And as we close this, in addition to this great conversation that we had, we all collectively owe you a debt of gratitude, Master Varii and to Slave Neil, for the work that you're doing on maintaining, housing, and sharing the Leather Quilt with all of us. It is
I would like to acknowledge somebody that's on this line too that has been very instrumental. Lexi did the brand new and beautiful website for the Leather Quilt, and she and her master are involved in helping to educate people about the leather history. They're amazing people.
Thank you, Lexi, for the work that you did, because I literally needed to go and find out the complete answer to that. And I went to the website, and the website looks really good. Before we go, when we were going back, Carrie DID had posted having DID, and I said I didn't know what that was, but that's why Google is free. DID stands for dissociative identity disorder. So for those of you who did not know, again, DID stands for dissociative identity disorder, and they put it out there. And so I thought it was important for us to take a moment to acknowledge their vulnerability and openness by speaking about a personal condition. So thank you all that participated. And so the winner of this contest, so that's 3, that's 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. The winner of the contest is Leather Lioness. But because we are all feeling so good about what we're going to be doing for all of you at Leather Leadership Conference 2025, if you email me at Leather Leadership Conference, LLC operating at gmail.com. I'm about to put it in the chat. If you email me at LLC operating at Leather Leadership, let me get my words together. LLC operating at gmail.com. Honey Bear, blank space, Leather Lioness, House of Ra, Goddess Indigo, which I think you've already got a ticket, so maybe this doesn't apply to you. Cat Black, Bear Mike, Jeremy Nelson, and Lexi Bailey. You all get free tickets to LLC. But in order to do that, you have to, one, reach back out to me at that address saying that you are interested in the free ticket, and you have to book your 2-night stay at the Hilton LAX. The link for all of that is in the website, which is, again, the Leather Leader Con. So I'm going to copy and paste that link address in the chat too. So again, if you are interested in one of those tickets and you are one of those people, again, Honey Bear, blank space, Leather Lioness, House of Ra, Goddess Indigo, Cat Black, Bear Mike, Jeremy Nelson, or Lexi Bailey, reach out to me at that email address. Once you've booked your hotel room, your 2-night hotel stay for Leather Leadership Conference, and you can find the links for that at Leather Leader Con, linktree.leatherleadercon. Excellent. So thank you all so much for this. These kinds of things, as we talked about being givers and takers and all of that, I'm always reinvigorated by these sort of community conversations and hearing people, especially other leaders, because, sometimes misery loves company, but other times, joy loves joy, and the joy that we get from being in each other's company. And so there's going to be a lot more of that to come in March. So we look forward to seeing all of you at Leather Leadership Conference, and we are always open to your ideas about how we can make the conference better. This whole virtual series is a part of that. We'd heard the conversations about how we can offer some free programming or how we can make it more widely accessible. And these are our first steps towards doing that. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's see. Thank you so much. Thank you, Blank Space, for being here. If you all hadn't been here, we literally could have just been talking to each other for the past hour and 20 minutes. So thank you all for coming out. God bless you and good night.